Welcome back. It is 3:50 on a holiday Monday, and a story that I think, I don't know, it catches a lot of people by surprise or not. I guess only in the sense that 3 days ago this wasn't a story, and then today it is. So if you haven't heard, Ontario's housing minister, his name is Stephen Clark, forced to resign today. When I say forced, I think that's probably accurate. David Heurtel, a former Quebec Liberal cabinet minister, now, of course, council at Fasken, and often here, political analyst on CJD, is on the line. David, I thought you'd be the guy to go to on this, having been in cabinet before. This is not a small sort of decision here, is it? I mean, this is kind of like the next guy to would have had to be the premier here, wouldn't it?
Yeah, this is major, especially in this era, right, where we talk a lot about ministerial responsibility. It seems governments will do anything to avoid ministers resigning, and this is a big deal when a cabinet minister, and we're 1 year in the second mandate by Premier Doug Ford. He won a huge majority, kind of mirroring what François Legault did as well last year. And this Greenbelt scandal, this land swap scandal, doesn't seem to be dying out. Quite the contrary. This resignation will probably be designed by Doug Ford to try to quell this, but I think there's still a lot of unanswered questions left out there, and I don't think the scandal is far from over.
Yeah, by the way, one of those questions ought to be, is this the kiss of death, David, when the premier comes to your defense on Thursday and says, no, I fully back the housing minister, and then on Monday he's done?
Yeah, exactly. Isn't that the same thing? We see it in so many situations. Remember, like, usually when a general manager
it's a
says,
sports analogy, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. I have full confidence in my coach, and 2 days later, the
See
coach
ya.
is gone.
Yeah.
And so this is, here's the thing. A few weeks ago, you have an auditor general's report, and we have them. They come out regularly, saying that, and we're talking massive tracts of land which had been set aside in something that's called the Greenbelt, which was set up in 2005 by the then Liberal government of Dalton McGuinty. And this was designed as a big environmental conservation move, right, to prevent urban sprawl and to favor density in the Greater Toronto area. And so a massive tract of land that was going to be reserved for conservation, for agriculture, and also for First Nations. And this Auditor General's report comes out and says massive tracts of land were swapped out of the Greenbelt in favor of real estate developers. And the Auditor General estimates that because of that move, that followed no type of oversight or process, which was done basically secretly, behind closed doors, through the housing minister's office. This land that was swapped out, Aaron, will pick up $8.3 billion in value, Aaron. This is huge. This is not like just a small potatoes type of political scandal. This is massive. And last week, the Integrity Commissioner came out with a report saying, well, the housing minister may not have known, and it seemed that the one that was going to fall on his sword was going to be the housing minister's chief of staff.
Right.
And they were apparently circling the wagons around this fact that apparently the chief of staff had done this basically on his own without really informing the housing minister, which is, in my mind, very hard to believe. And following that, and I think Doug Ford saw that was just simply not flying, and that the housing minister did not know of the magnitude of this land swap, and also favoring certain land developers. And ultimately, on Labor Day of all days, the housing minister resigns. Doug Ford thanks him for his service. There was an emergency caucus, most assuredly a cabinet shuffle that could be important. So this is a big deal, and there's going to be calls for inquiries, and and a better understanding of who benefited and how this can happen without any kind of oversight, legislative or regulatory.
Yeah, it's when you mentioned, just so people get the scope of this, you mentioned, giant, almost 3,000 hectares of land. The government was planning to build 50,000 homes, which begs the question, okay, this deal is not going to go down the way it was intended to, but Doug Ford seems to be committed to this idea. We need to build homes. We need to give people a place to live. What happens?
Well, and that's going to be his line of defense, because I think he's going to double down, because what he wants to build on, pardon the pun, is the housing crisis. We talk about this, you and Natasha talk about this every week, about the housing situation here in Montreal and in Quebec. But it's the same thing in Toronto and in Ontario, even worse in certain aspects. And he's promised, and he made this promise during the election campaign back in May, June of 2022, that he would build 1.5 million homes. And he has focused his government on delivering on this promise. And he says, you know what? I'm going to move forward on this. And this is important for Ontarians. It's important for people who can't afford homes. So I'm doubling down, and I'm going to deliver on this promise. And he has a huge majority in the Ontario legislature, just like François Legault does here. And he's gonna push through. And right now, I mean, the Auditor General's report is damning. There are certain questions that are still outstanding, but even the Integrity Commissioner, after its report just said, well, we should reprimand the housing minister. So it doesn't seem to have any further wrongdoing to be discovered. But we can always wait and see. But Doug Ford, politically, he's doubling down. He's not going to back down. He says, my priority is making homes affordable for Ontarians, and we need this land to make it so.
So if I'm going to connect the dots here, you'll tell me that, hopefully, or if you're Doug Ford, hopefully it's not going to happen. You have the chief of staff of the housing minister taking the blame and stepping down. We thought that would be the end of it. Now you have the actual housing minister, as you just laid out, David. You can't just say, I didn't know he was your chief of staff. So he walks away. The next logical, and I know the opposition is saying this, but that's their job. The next logical step, according to them, is for Doug Ford to resign. So how likely is that?
Well, right now, unless a smoking gun connects the premier directly to some of these developers, or the decision that the chief of staff and Minister Clark made to release these huge tracts of land, I don't see how it could reach Doug Ford. Ultimately in politics, Aaron, ministers' roles is exactly that: insulate the premier or the prime minister from these types of issues. So if there's any type of wrongdoing or mistakes that are made, the final line of defense is the minister, and the minister, it's almost his duty to fall on his sword, and that's what happened today. So I doubt, right now there's nothing suggesting that Doug Ford is in jeopardy.
But we also, I think we know, David, that Doug Ford knows or knew or entertained some of these real estate developers on his own.
Yes.
That's not proof of guilt. I'm just saying it's there.
It's there. And politically, it exposes them to attacks. But is there any type of evidence of wrongdoing or any type of action that could suggest corruption or anything of that level? Right now, we don't have anything on the table that shows that. So yes, he has been seen to be very close to these developers. But at the same time, that's not illegal, and it's not grounds to necessarily mount to forcing the premier to resign. But definitely, there are more questions to be answered, and the opposition parties and the media, environmental groups, and First Nations are going to keep on hammering on this.
I will point out, just as we wrap this up, that Stephen Clark, who resigned as housing minister, is still in the government. He's not walking away from government. He's just not the housing minister.
He didn't resign his seat.
Right.
So he's out of cabinet, but he did not resign his seat, and he's still part of the Conservative caucus. He was not expelled from caucus, and I feel that Doug Ford is going to make sure that this loyal soldier will stay around as long as possible.
David Heurtel. David, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure,
All
Aaron.
right, there you go. 4 o'clock. Let's get you caught up on the news. Then when we come back, news from the food sector today. Striking metro workers have reached a deal. What does it mean in Quebec? We'll find out from the food professor, Sylvain Charlebois, next.